Good afternoon, Natasha.
Hello.
Hello. I'm going to actually turn my mic around here a little bit. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is very exciting. We have had a massive amount of interest in having you on, and so I know that we're in for an amazing conversation. So thanks for making the time.
No, thank you for having me.
I want to get an opportunity first off to address everyone who's watching and kind of give them a sense of what they're in for today. I think the conversation is going to be amazing anyways because of the work that you do and in just talking about the work that you do. But we really wanted to spend a bit of time today and really kind of couch the conversation in this idea about having a lot of variety in your work and having some diversity in your work. And this is kind of the only part of the conversation where I'm going to overspeak and just kind of put in my 2 cents, because what I find personally as an artist is that we are given a very distinct message, that we have to develop a very specific style. And once we develop our quote unquote voice, or we develop our style, that's when success starts to come to us, because people can recognize our style as a brand. And that's going to kind of lead the way or pave the way for us. And, in my world, in the world of filmmaking, we see that definitely from directors. Directors need to have a very distinct style that's to be sold, right? Like that's what they're selling on. But in the realm of cinematography, where I come from, it's very much the opposite. Where as a cinematographer, you're expected to be good at everything. You should be able to do a toy commercial one day, and then a narrative feature the next, and then a music video for a rap artist. You kind of have to do all sorts of things. So I find that this conversation you and I are going to have today, when it comes to photography, is really about kind of a blending of those two things. In a lot of ways, I find photographers, particularly editorial or fashion photographers, they are a blend of director and photographer. You're there to relate to your talent, you're there to set a vision, but you also have to be practical in the way that you create images. You have to show a lot of command over a variety of situations. So that's all I'm going to say. That's what we're in for today, to hear your thoughts on about how you've taken diversity in your work and made it a success under a climate that says not necessarily something of the contrary, but that complicates things a little bit. So we're hoping to freshen the air over this idea a little bit. So before we begin, for those who are not familiar with you and your work, give us a sense of how you consider yourself as a photographer and where you came from. So how you developed into the type of artist that you are today. It's all you now.
All right. I feel like nowadays I can recognize myself more as an image maker, not necessarily as a photographer. And the reason is because I find that I put together images. I don't necessarily, I feel like the word photographer is not what it applies to today. It's all very digitalized. You get to actually work with the images. I can put a head from one picture and put it in the next one, and switch things around, make an entire image out of nothing. So it's more about image making than actually being a photographer. But that's more my the way that I see my work. Now I know a lot of people that also call themselves image makers because they kind of, understand that sort of vision as well. But in terms of how I got here, it was kind of like a rocky road. I started to try to find myself, I guess, into what I wanted to do. I never expected to be in the fashion and beauty world. I thought it was going to be more in advertising because I really love the idea behind it, the concepts, and especially because I do come from a South American country where the I guess the how do you say this? The concepts come a little bit more deeper and a little bit more sarcastic and humorous, and I really like that aspect of things. But I guess what I do now is I do more conceptual work, fine art, fashion. It's a little bit of everything. It's mixed up, but I do also do commercial work too. So it's. Did I answer your question?
Absolutely. When you started out though, so talk about like the time when you first picked up a camera Like, do you remember those times? Do you remember what you thought
Yeah.
you wanted to do when it came to photography?
Yeah, absolutely. The first time I picked up, I can go back when I was like 6 years old, and the first thing that I saw was my one of my aunts had a film, like a camera recorder, and I remember being so cautious of not having shaky camera, and I loved being the one. Okay, Natasha's got, she's gonna be taking care of the shots, or like, it was like family film stuff, and I loved doing that. But more seriously, I kind of forgot about that. I moved to Canada, and then I was set in stone going to follow with medicine or being a lawyer, just because that's what I grew up knowing. You're going to be successful if you become that. And when I believe it was grade 9 or 10, I got involved in a class of photography where I got to learn the darkroom, and that was it. It just hit me. It was like I was obsessed with the darkroom. I was developing pretty much a lot of my classmates' negatives, and I would stay after school inside that darkroom. I was a little bit obsessed in that sense. I fell in love with that camera. I believe it was a Minolta X700. I can't remember now, but it was definitely a Minolta, and that was the time that I fell in love with it. Again, after I finished high school, I thought I was still going to be going to medicine school, actually, more than law. And it was a last minute decision. I said, no, my gut is telling me not to do this. And I ended up going into an art school, Sheridan College, actually. And then I did 2 years of general arts, and then I went into photography for another 2 years.
And was there
At the time was 2 years.
Right. And was there a moment for you where, as you started the process of photography, maybe it was after Sheridan, maybe it was during, where you started to see evidence of your personal style evolve, where you're like, oh, I took this photo, a couple weeks ago, and now I've taken this one in two different situations, but they are kind of feeling the same. Have you ever noticed like your work was starting to head in a particular direction?
I think I always been really interested in the surrealism. That never changed. I remember before even going to school in Sheridan, I was playing around with Photoshop and trying to understand. I was teaching myself a lot of the things. So I really didn't quite, I really liked knowing that I could make things and change them up and be a little bit like, make something that it's real, not real, but make you question it, sort of thing. I can see that sort of being a little bit on that pattern, but I've definitely grown. I mean, if you were to see the portfolio that I presented, yeah, it's definitely I've grown. I've definitely refined my taste. I have, technically, I've also grown, and I'm still growing. It's still a evolution that it never ends, really. So.
And how did you end up? I mean, you originally said, "Oh, I thought I'd be in advertising," and then I never thought I would find myself in beauty and fashion. What changed? What changed down that path?
Actually, it was in the first year of photography that I was working. I was actually one specific assignment that they gave me. It was shoot 50 strangers, like portraits, and one of those people was a makeup artist that was in the school, and she said, "You know what? I'm in my last year, and I need a photographer to shoot my portfolio." I ended up shooting all of the makeup artist's portfolio. So by second year, I was able to get in contact because of these makeup artists. They ended up, flourishing into their own careers, and somehow their portfolio started touching people like everybody else's. Was, oh, who shot this? And anyway, long story short, I met with a hairstylist who needed to do some competition work for Revlon, and we ended up second place worldwide, which was a big deal for them. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, and it just sort of, that was a step in the beauty world that I never really thought I would enter. And ever since then, it was like a a snowball. It just kept coming more and more. While I was in school, I was still shooting some salon work, like more like for their ads and their windows and things like that. And it just sort of happened. And I'm a person that really listens. So I try to really put myself in their shoes and to see what it is that they want. So it was a little bit more, it was kind of organic. Like, I'm a very big collaborator, so their vision was shared with mine, and then I was just sort of creating what they were wanting to see, and I just kept working with more and more people that were in the makeup and hair world. Yeah.
And one of the things that I'm really curious about, which is, listen to this story. I hear this thing that I hear often with people who sort of catapult to stardom, which is that they've found something in themselves that is very organic to them, and almost like I struggle to actually put a name to it, but it's something that's so unique about them that they maybe don't even recognize, right? Because everyone's going through the same sort of thought processes when they're developing their craft. But it ignites something. So this particular case where, a makeup artist asks you, oh, can you shoot my portfolio? And you're like, sure, I got to shoot stuff anyways. And then suddenly, like, it just snowballs and you find yourself in the middle of this competition and, and all this acclaim. And I wonder for you, kind of like, where does this come from? Like, where did this ability to connect with that particular type of subject, whether it's beauty or fashion, where that came from? And kind of like a two-part question, which is that maybe because you're Argentinian and I've romanticized sort of Spanish artists, I think about Salvador Dali and all his like moving portraits, or he throws all these things in the air, like Spanish artists have this proclivity to like high level creativity. And when I look at your work and I look at your camera angles and I look at the motion in your work, I kind of feel like there's a lot of that in there. And so I wonder, when all this started happening for you, could you isolate where this was coming from? Could you isolate what was in you and the way you grew up that made you interested or made you good at this particular type of photography?
I think definitely listening, just listening and understanding and putting myself in somebody else's shoes. But visually, I think I do put a lot of emotion. Yeah, definitely. I do put a lot of emotion. I'm a pretty sensitive person, and everybody that knows me knows that. So I think that there's definitely an emotion. When I know that I got an image, there's an emotional, like, how do you say this? It's almost like you just let go of something really heavy. That's exactly what it feels like. It's almost like, yes, it's done. And sometimes I gotta do shoots specifically for that. Like, sometimes I've got a dream that it's been lingering and lingering and lingering, and I'm like, I just gotta shoot this, and then it's just gone. Once I do it, there's such a release that and it could be colors, it could be music, it could be like, it always changes, right? But I don't really know what it is that made me good at it, because I don't really see myself quite there yet. I feel like there's a lot of work that needs to happen, but I think being able to listen and understand other people's views, not necessarily all yours, but I also see other artists that it's all about what's in their head, and it's incredible what they're able to do. And if it's not their way, forget it. And I also agree with that too. It's just everybody works differently. So that was my journey. So
I love what you said about, you have this energy in you, this thing that you need to release, and you feel so much better when you get an opportunity to release that energy into something. And I think that really encapsulates what it's like to be an artist, that we carry these things with us. And our art is a way for us to just figure ourselves out, just to be able to emote in some sort of way, in a very visceral way. And I can see
Yeah.
that in your work. And I think a lot of amazing artists, we see that. I think that's one thing that unites us all, is we're seeing such a deep emotion that comes from, you know, from us into our art, right? It's part of us. I actually, speaking of beauty and fashion, we got our first question here from the chat. And my apologies to Jackie. I will not even attempt to pronounce your last name. But Jackie asks, how do you, Natasha, describe beauty? So when you're talking about beauty photography, how would you describe that?
Well, I think beauty doesn't necessarily look like anything. It's more about what is, it's about the person. I find that it really is about the person. Like I've had this question asked before, and I don't know how nobody else can see it, but it's true. I can talk to you, and I can already see the beauty in you, and it's not necessarily that you have to be a model or a woman, or you have to have a specific. It's just that it's the personality. It's what's within you, kind of thing.
Could we say that then maybe that there are two ways of looking at beauty? One is, as a artist capturing beauty, you're doing what you're saying, which is you're finding the dominant positive traits in that person and putting that forward. But would you also say too that a lot of confusion from people comes, what's fashion and what's beauty? And the way I've always described it is, beauty is about skin tone. You're selling often makeup, you're selling soap, things like that, things that make your skin look really good, or hair products, things like that. Whereas fashion, you're selling the clothing. So it doesn't mean that, you're looking for a person that will just show off those clothes very well, but it's less about how that person physically looks, more about their body style.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel that's the way I see it. I don't necessarily have a formula on how somebody has to look like. It really truly is more about whoever it is that I'm shooting, even if it is for a commercial. Sometimes, most of the times I'm in the casting process, so I'm able to put my input into who we're going to be shooting with and why, especially now that I really understand how hair is shot and how how it can behave. I mean, hairdressers will know better too, but I can almost see an end result. When I see somebody's faces, I know exactly what I'm going to do when how I'm going to shoot that person. So if we're shooting a commercial and we see a bunch of different girls or guys that come in, I kind of already know who is going to be good for that product. But again, I'm thinking about who the client is and what it is that we're shooting. If it's something that is coming from me, it's also very specific. Sometimes there's a specific way that somebody might look, or what they make me feel when I look at them. So that's when I kind of have a little bit more of a casting myself on who I want to work with when there's a fashion story or something like that.
I think one of the things that's really intimidating for portrait photographers and people who are developing into fashion and beauty photographers is that the human face is a pretty varied thing. There's a lot of variety when it comes to human face. And, we've heard a lot of times too that, like, women, for example, you want to shoot sort of above, looking down. This is sort of like that typical, online dating thing where men tend to shoot themselves, with the camera down low, and women tend to shoot themselves with their phone up high, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But so much of really excellent fashion and beauty photography break those rules. And I think if we just look at the thumbnail that we've chosen for our talk today, this is a shot that's taken down low. We're looking up towards the model, but she looks incredible. So it's really intimidating for a lot of us to go, well, man, like, how do I know when to shoot a man low or a man high, a woman low, a woman high, a woman from the side? How do I know to light them from the top? Like, how did you develop your instinct in that way? Because there's so much variety.
I think it was in the search of what it is that I liked. And that search was shooting everything I could, however I could. And I'm a very curious person when it comes to those things. Like yeah, I like to experiment and see what happens with this. And I mean, I've experimented even with prints, like in the dark room, or even after I have the prints developed. Like, what do I do after with this? Like, I've tried different chemicals and things like. I mean, things that I probably wouldn't tell you because it's pretty bad, but for the environment or even just for a person to be around. But I was curious, and I just wanted to know what the chemical reaction would do, and. Um, so I think that that's how it happened. It was just more about breaking the rules, I guess, not necessarily knowing what the rules really were. I mean, in school there was a lot of rules, but I broke them most of the time because that was my instinct, actually. But it was one of those things that you just, if it made a reaction to me, then that's all I kind of wanted out of it. And maybe it didn't have that same reaction to everyone else, but
Right.
that's the sort of that's kind of the way that I choose my images too.
Well, I certainly get a reaction out of it. So, I mean, like, yeah, I think you're doing something right. I don't know if this is too much to ask, but
Tell me.
I've heard from a lot of professional photographers that what they usually do when they are going into, especially a commercial photo session, is that they are trying to get their easy shots out of the way. They're trying to get the shots they know work every time so that the client can see that they're getting some good stuff right away. They're happy. And that's like, okay, great. Now it's my turn to break some rules. Now it's my turn to try some crazy things because I've gotten the easy shots, the quick wins out of the way. So maybe if it's possible to give some tips to our viewers, and maybe I'll steal them myself, is what are your quick wins? What do you typically do when you start off a session in terms of framing, camera angles, like lens angles? What do you go in and try to get right away?
And in a commercial setting?
Yeah, or I mean, really in any setting. But what are the quick wins for you that you know is going to look good every time, or nearly every time?
Okay, I'll answer in the commercial setting because it's a little bit different when it comes to a creative or yeah. So commercial setting, I guess I just have. It's not always the same lighting. That's another thing. It just depends on what it is that I'm shooting. But I guess lighting comes in first. As long as the lighting looks good, I know that everything else is gonna run fine. So I set up the lighting and I will make sure that the model looks great. I take a couple of shots and know that when I know that I got the shot that the client wants. Okay, sorry, I'm going too fast. Choice of lenses, I usually go for prime lenses, such as 100 millimeter or 50, 85. Yeah, I guess depending on what I am shooting, but those prime lenses are my go-to. I set the model up. I don't know if you want me to give you an example of lighting,
Sure.
but it's very. I got a key light. Usually is my Parabolix 45, which sometimes I use it with a diffuser, sometimes I don't. Most of the times I don't because it's just such a versatile light that I love, switching from diffused light to focused light. I usually have it somewhere around my realm, like whether if it's on my right side, left side, up, right above me. And then sometimes I have a reflector, sometimes I don't. If I don't, then I have a fill light behind me, which is usually an octabox diffused, maybe like half of the stop of my key light, and maybe a hair light coming from above on a white umbrella, maybe, but and very soft. That's like simple, basic, my go-to kind of thing. But it always changes. And I know once I get my shot, then that's that. Now, when I go in and change it, and I know that I can get something better, then it depends on who is in front of me. It depends what kind of energy we exchange, and what I can get with that person. So that I would just tell my client, hey, we got like 5 minutes. If you give me 5 minutes, I want to get a couple extra shots. If we have it, great, and I'll show them what I was able to go. Most of the times they end up choosing those shots. But it's just about, who you're working with and what it is that they want. So, yeah.
I've heard a lot of photographers, especially editorial, portrait, and journalists who do more like sit down shots, not necessarily in the field, say that what they always try to do is start really close. Like they get in and they'll actually be within a meter or two of the subject and be right up in their face. Yeah. And the reason is one is often that intimacy creates a nice headshot, but also that it creates a bond between them because you're kind of in their personal space. So you start to develop and then develop that relationship and that comfort, and then you start moving out. Do you feel like you do something different or similar? Do you always start wide and move in? Or is it different every single time?
It really changes. I'm sorry. It does. It depends on what I'm shooting, and I tend to like going in close and for close-ups, but I don't. I'd like to vary. I like to show the whole look, and I also like to go in close. It's very varied. It depends. I don't necessarily have a way that I start. Maybe I would say that in the past year or so, I feel like, okay, I'm going to start with 100 millimeter. And because it's a versatile, like you don't have to go up close. It's a macro lens, but I can also shoot from far. And I've definitely used that lens, I guess, to start with, or the 85. And then once I start shooting, I'm like, okay, I change it, and then I change it. And then for the entire, I probably use all of my lenses by the end of the shoot.
Amazing.
So, and it's not only just prime lenses, sorry, it's also wide lenses and, continue.
Our chat is blowing up here, and so just so people don't tune out because their questions not getting answered, we're going to start firing through them. And then after we get through this next block of questions, we're going to start looking at some of your photos, and we're going to start talking about some specific photos. So please stay tuned for that. Okay, I'm going to get through them all right now. Jackie asked another question. Jackie, we're going to get to you after these guys. Raul Martinez says, which photographer has influenced you the most?
Which photographer? I would say Salve Sandoval.
Salve Sandoval. And where is this? A Spanish, South American?
No, sorry, he's from Norway, but I think he's in Britain now. Yeah.
Amazing. And what type of work is Salve, and why does this person inspire you so much?
It's just, there's so many. I could name so many right now. But Solveig is just so, he's also very experimental. I could see it in his work. I remember seeing one of his images and I was like, who is this? I need to know more of him. And then I just started seeing more of his work, and it was just like, I almost felt that he was getting my ideas in his brain and photographing them. I'm like, what is this? Like it was, I felt almost an incredible connection without even knowing this guy. But again, it can happen with a lot of different photographers. I mean, it depends on what it is. I tend to be more inspired with paintings, music. I mean, actually anything can really inspire me, but we're talking about a photographer here. The first one that came up was him. Yeah.
What in further to that, when you talk about music or paintings, in your prep process, do you, when you're creating lookbooks or mood boards or whatever, do you listen to music and go, I want to play this playlist and this type of music during the shoot? These are the paintings that I want to reference. Do you reference like cloth, like this, this pattern? What do you do?
There's different mood boards, and depends on who I'm working with too. But when you see a mood board that I made, especially for myself, when I start to create an idea, there's usually colors, textures, things that don't really, it's just more about what it is that those things make me feel, and kind of refine that idea for myself so then I can translate it to the team. There's paintings, there's music. The music actually depends. Sometimes I have an idea of what it is I want to play on set. Sometimes I just play whatever the model likes. Sometimes I just play something that I know everybody's going to feel a good groove in the set. It's just that music is important, and it kind of sets the mood on set, and depending on what it is that we're shooting too. So, my prep work looks like a lot of different sort of visuals that will be then modified into maybe what maybe if I know the makeup artist, I will kind of just even send a picture of a rock, and I'm like, look, I really love these colors and the texture it has in it. Like, do you think you can translate it to makeup? And that's it.
It's amazing.
So it just really depends on who I'm working with too.
Right. I mean, we get that a lot in the filmmaking world, where cinematographers will more often reference photos than other things that were shot in motion. You know, they won't reference another film, or they'll reference typically photographs. And it's neat to hear as a photographer, you're going, well, I'm not going to reference necessarily another photograph. I'm going to reference a plant or a rock or a piece of music, you know, and I think that's a really great way of looking at creativity. Further to that, we actually got a great question that sort of references all of this, which is from Fabian. And Fabian would like to know, and this can be a long answer, so you know, keep in mind just Reader's Digest version. Okay. Can you describe your process from booking models, coming up with the concept, and finishing up an image? So the highlight reel of that.
If it's a creative, I have to have a concept already set in order to find a model. Well, actually that changes, because sometimes there's a model that really inspires me to do something. So let's say I book the model. Depending on what the concept is, I kind of have different teams and different people that I work with, and you know, they all kind of have their own way of working. Usually they're all pretty versatile too, but they have things that they like themselves. So if I know they're going to be excited, because depending on what kind of work they do, and I know they're going to be excited for if it's going to be really weird makeup, then okay, I'm going to choose that person and bring them on board. Choose this person for a wardrobe that I know it's going to be able to either make or create amazing outfits or whatever. It depends on the concept, really. But once we've got all that figured out, I grab the team, I put the team together. I find a space to shoot, depending on, again, the concept, if I have to build a set, or if I have a location outside that I want to shoot, or if I don't really necessarily need a space, it could be something very small, like I don't need to have a big space for it. While I'm shooting, I usually like to have my computer beside me, so that the models can see themselves, seeing what it is that, you know, the results that we're getting, and then they kind of understand our vision too, because again, they just show up that day and sometimes they have no idea what the mood board looks like. So all that, I kind of marinate that during the shoot too, with the model. And while I know that when we have a shot of each look, I have not one shot, I usually have like 4 minimum. And then I kind of go through them with the team at the end of the shoot, just to see, you know, this is the recap of what we did all day. And then I go home. I basically go into the images to see which ones are the ones that I want to, my final selection. And if it's for a magazine, I have a certain amount that I need to have and a certain looks that I have to put in for sure. So I make sure that those requirements are done. And after that, it's me post-processing.
Yeah. And do you have an idea of, like, you know, how you approach post? I mean, you talked earlier about, like, one of the things that you love to do is sort of collage images together and not be bound by just the single photo. How often are you doing multiplicity within your images, and how often are you just taking that frame that you took?
So it's been such also like a roller coaster, learning the photoshopping skin skills and everything. I can say that I look at my work from 3 years ago and I'm like, oh my God, no. I can see the horrible things that I was doing. But again, it was also a learning process. It's still a learning process. I am actually, I've been retouching my own images myself for forever, and I would say that in the last year actually, I've been in contact with some retouchers that would help me, because there was a lot of demand all at once, very congested time that I had no time to actually retouch my own work. Or well, it was more, I needed help with hair, for example. In editing hair, it is time consuming. It can take you days for just one image. So I needed some help at that point. So that's when I kind of brought in a couple of people that would help me out with the hair part, but then I would finish the image myself, because it was still a very weird thing to let go of my image and give it to somebody else to finish it off. But now, actually, in this quarantine, I actually met a lot of wonderful, wonderful people that are wanting to collaborate, and I'm seeing the result, and it's just, it makes you question. I'm like, oh, should I have been doing this before? I don't know. But again, it is something that I really love to do. I really love to retouch. So I would still do it. It's just maybe for specific jobs that I would have, right. I will try to see if I would take that direction.
And how did you learn all these skills? Was it like a formal course? Did you take a couple courses? Was it just trial and error? Was it reading articles? Was it just tons of free YouTube tutorials? What do you think it was that really helped you along? So
prior to Sheridan, I actually did all of my research before on maybe YouTube or articles or things that I would teach myself. Then I went to Sheridan, and something that would take me 45 minutes to do, I could do it in 5 minutes, and I wanted to kill myself. Like, are you kidding me? I didn't know I could do this. So it was great. So I did learn a lot in Sheridan. However, Photoshop keeps getting better and better and better every day. So it's almost like you have to keep that traction. And I get it from different webinars, or there's like master classes or things like that. I've done one of those. And I do follow YouTube, and
awesome.
That's how I do it.
Further on to our questions, we have one from Digital Desk. Digital Desk says, I love your creativity, and they want to know, they have a question about your process, which is, imagine you have a blank page, you haven't decided upon anything yet, and you can do whatever you want. So let's say this is a personal creative project. What's your process? Starting from nothing.
First, I have to get inspired by something. And it could be as simple as walking outside and seeing a cloud. I mean, clouds are very much in pretty much every shoot that I do. Like, there's some sort of like airiness to it. So yes, I think that is, let's just say I get inspired by a cloud. Okay. I kind of have a feeling of, maybe airiness or whatever, and I'm starting to visualize what it is that I want to do. In this case, sometimes I get to actually see who it is that I want to work with. So like I mentioned before, I would probably try to work with someone. I always try to work with new people, but if I worked with somebody who I had an incredible connection, which I do and I have, I most likely would reach out to them and be like, do you want to do this? Like, I've got this idea. And I would do the same with my team. And I would ask them, okay, I've got this idea. What do you guys think? Sometimes they think I'm crazy, but they're always like, okay, let's just try and do it. My colleagues have always been incredibly supportive on a lot of things that I want to do. And the trust between each other is very important. Then it's about the shoot day. And I got to tell you, sometimes I walk in that set and I have no idea how I'm going to be shooting it. However, there is days that I have an entire sketchbook, knowing exactly where I'm going to place the light, where the model is going to be, whatever. So there's the range is huge. So it just depends on I guess the concept and what we were able to pull in clothes, and and sometimes the model will stand right there, and if it's a new model that I've never worked with, I get a complete different feel. Still maintaining the concept, I will probably change the way that I'm going to light it and the way that the whole shoot is going to feel. So it's hard to answer a specific way that I work, because every time that I shoot is very different.
Awesome. This is a perfect opportunity to move into Alyssa's question, which is the next phase of our conversation, which is talking about your images, because Alyssa Minton asks, if you had to pick one shoot concept that you really loved working on, which would you choose and why? And I think this is a great opportunity to dive into your photos.
Okay. So hold on, should we move into the photos or
Let's
should
do
I
it.
answer that question?
Well, you can ask
Okay,
the
okay.
question first, and then we can move into photos.
The thing is that there's Alyssa, hey, by the way, she's amazing. I gotta, concept-wise, there's so many things that I want to shoot. I don't even have my entire life to shoot them probably. So it's a continuous thing, and the thing is, sometimes I wait for the right time to shoot them. So I'm sorry, Alyssa, you know me. You probably know that the concepts that I have are always very varied, but I'll think about it and see if I can answer it later. But I'll get into the pictures for now. Which I was actually trying to, I put together a little presentation so you guys can see. Are you able to see it now? Okay. From the shoots that I do have behind the scenes, because I think it might be easier to see. So this is one of the images that I did. Erica Fong was on hair. We had Brodine on makeup. She's from Judy Inc. We had Leia Capran on styling. And this was a shoot that was inspired by Comme des Garçons, and it was very avant-garde clothes that we were wanting to do. I only have, you guys can see, and I can probably show you after the story, which is in my website. So the behind the scenes of this, which I don't have much of it, you guys can see a little bit of what was going on. This is Erica Brodine working on Nina, who's with Elmer Olsen, and that's sort of behind the scenes. And on the left side, you can see that there's two panels where the model was standing on a box, on an Apple box, and I was lighting it from behind. I think I had 4 lights in total, maybe 4 or 5, perhaps 3 on the back. I can't quite remember right now, but 2 on the front. One was the key light that was more I'm gonna go back. The key light that was more that had a blue filter, and sort of, I would say, fill light that was coming from underneath. That would be an orange light, or orange gel. Then on the back we had 2 other gel lights that were just lighting the background and giving a little bit more of a sunsetty kind of vibe. And then, like I was mentioning to you earlier, this is more towards the end of the shoot. On the top right corner, you get to see a little bit of what the shoot kind of feels like, or what we had so far. Actually, there's a ton of other looks that are not there. But yeah, it's just to kind of show you. If you have questions, shoot.
Well, I was just going to say, going back to that, the 2 flats that you have on either side, that's really there to control the spill from the backlights and just to bring in some fill overall into the subject, I'm assuming?
Yeah, to create a little bit more contrast, and just to, I did like some of the, it's not in this image, but in some other images, you get to see a little bit of the light kind of wrapping around the jawline and things like that, which I do like. But it was mostly for contrast and just controlling the light from spilling too much.
Great. You can move on.
I just wanted to show different things or different settings that I worked with. Actually, Alyssa was assisting me on this one. This one was outside. By the way, this is a shoot or an example of my impulsiveness. That morning I woke up and I said, I need to shoot today. It's a great day. And Alakir, the model, she was leaving to Vancouver the next day. And I'm like, I just saw her and I wanted to shoot her. And I said, we're doing this. I called up Michelle, who is a stylist. And I said, Michelle, I need you to pull some swimwear. Can you shoot today? She said yes. She was down for it. And then Paola Manigat, she was the makeup artist, and she was totally down to do it as well. And Alyssa was available, and we're like, okay, we're doing this. It was very nerve-wracking because I just called everybody up on the spot, and I'm like, okay, we're doing this. There was no mood board, nothing. It was all in my head. So I just sort of got everybody together, and we went and shot, and we did it very quickly, because it was freezing that day. So, oh, here's another shot. So here's a little bit of the behind the scenes of what was going on. Paola, being a good sport, trying to like warm up Alakir because it was really cold that day. On my left side, you're gonna see there that I kind of try to see what's gonna happen if she lies down. Sometimes I do that when I put myself in the position of the model and make sure that she is gonna be comfortable, or if she's gonna be able to do what I'm asking her. Because sometimes it's better showing it than explaining what to do. Then on the other 2 slides on the right, or 3 slides on the right, you're gonna see me kind of working what you get, how I'm working on with the model, and how I got the shot that you guys saw earlier.
And what I'm seeing here too is not a ton of modifiers on the, like not a lot of light sculpting tools, not a lot of bounces or anything. It seems pretty much like you're just working with a lot of available light. In a situation like this where you just decide that day you're going to do something, you don't have all this time to prep or do test shoots, you're going into a situation like this, what are you bringing with you on the day to assist you in shaping the light and making the photos what they are?
Definitely a reflector or sort of a white bounce. I usually would have it if I were to be prepared. I had it that day too. It's definitely on the kit that we have, but I just didn't use it because the light was just so beautiful and soft and basically what I imagined. Sometimes I do bring lights like outdoor lighting just to use, or flashes, but this time it was just more about natural light, which is the reason why I put this in here, because it's not necessarily I don't only shoot in studio, I shoot outside, and I shoot both with flash, without flash, available light, with bounce, without bounce. But this was why I wanted to show it is because I was able to get those images without anything.
Mm-hmm. And I think what I really like about these samples too is the fact that, again, coming down to our theme today and the diversity of your work, these 2 projects couldn't be, they're both within the realm of beauty and fashion, but they couldn't be more different, right? In terms of the approach that you took and the tools that you use. Just an actual personal question here. Do you change your approach in terms of lighting and the type of reflectors you use when you're working with darker skin versus lighter skin? Sometimes. It's all kind of a little bit of a test when you get to see the model in person, because even when you get to see the digitals that they send you, especially when you don't know the person the model in person, I find that a lot of the skin tones are a little bit off, especially when you see their portfolio. It's not necessarily the right skin tone. So that most of the times I go to their Instagram and see what kind of skin tone they have. But again, it's not until I have them in front of me. And yes, the lighting does vary when I work with dark skin, but it's not that much different actually. At least in my opinion. Yeah. I'll let you continue along the journey here.
Yeah. So this one is just another project that I did recently. We have Elisa and Peace in this shot. Peace is with Ciari. Elisa is with Elmar Olsen. I'm just mentioning it. We had a blast this day. It was such a good day. And another project that it was for Carbon magazine, which everybody should go and check out. It's a beautiful magazine, well, a sketchbook, I guess. They asked me to basically have a shoot of a concept of my own. They didn't give me a concept, so I basically went in and I did what I wanted to do, which was all kinds of different lighting, all kinds of different ideas revolving the same concept. So here is the reason why I wanted to show this is because, yes, it is composite and it's the same people, but it's quite easy because you got a white background, so there's not that much post work, but it's more about what was in my head and what I was able to do. Also working with 2 people that I have worked with in the past who have incredible energies, and they didn't know each other, but that day was just so perfect because everything was blending perfectly. The stylist, it was my first time working with Felicia. She but the clothes that she pulled, it was just everything just went so nicely. The makeup artist was Elena Pacienta, and hairstylist Erica Fung. I had Alyssa and AJ assisting me that day, so it was just such a good day. The reason why I put the shot, the shot that of Peace kind of with this veil in her head is because it's also very important that the models are into what it is that they're doing, and both girls were just so involved and they knew exactly what I was trying to get out of it, and they were both extremely into it. So it made the shoot just easy and a pleasure.
Forgot to turn my microphone on. That hasn't happened before. Question about just working with certain people, and the reason I ask this is, you're talking about certain models that you just love working with, certain team members that you just love working with. And do you find, this is the idea of like every artist has a muse, right? Do you find that there are just certain people, whether they're models or makeup artists that you work with, that it just every time it's a banging shot? Like every time it's like, this is such a great shoot. They kind of like, it just things feel really, really easy. Do you find that there's a difference between those people and people that maybe you don't work with that often, that, you like, but you don't have the same magical connection? How do you deal with sort of that personality differences, and how does that affect the quality of the product that you get?
Well, it kind of goes back to what I was mentioning before. I think it's very important to know how to listen. So if I haven't worked with that other person, I feel like in order to get that connection with that person, it's almost like a shifter. Is that ship? What do you call it? This is the person that kind of like understands the concept, or like the person who's in front of you and trying to kind of mimic their way of their lifestyle or what it is that they like, understanding who that person is, and then actually putting yourself in that position so you have a better connection with this with the model. I find that maybe by starting with music, what kind of music do you like? Sometimes, most of the answer is like, I don't know, I like everything, which I get. But my next question is usually, okay, if you had to go to a concert, which concert would you go to? And who do you want to see? And then that's boom. Okay, that artist, I'm going to play this artist and try to get into the groove of that. And it's that kind of thing. So you have to kind of, in order to create that energy, there has to be a will in both parties. And everybody wants to get a good image out of it. So that's the way that I usually go about.
Do you feel like certain people that you connect with, can you hear me? Suddenly
Yes.
I don't hear myself. Yes. All of a sudden.
I can hear you.
Weirdly. I don't know why. But do you feel that that you connect with people on certain levels, like that there's just a personality connection when you say that there's people that you really like to work with, that that there's just something about how you match? I guess what I'm trying to extrapolate here from your brain is this idea that for photographers who are watching, when they're looking at building their team, ideally the mark of a professional photographer is to be able to work with everybody, because that's what being professional is, and that's what being a good human being is all about.
Yes.
But when we're looking to do creative projects and we're not bound by having to work with certain or specific people, that we can kind of choose who we work with. Do you can you find that there are just certain types of people that charm you, and that are always like, really connected in terms of they get what you're trying to do, and they deliver every time because they kind of in your own mind? Is there anything that you have to say around that?
I don't know if it could be personality, but I find that it comes a little bit to an energy level. I feel like if there's a vibe, and if sometimes that vibe, you gotta, if you don't feel it at first, you kind of have to break into it, especially when you don't know someone. Sometimes they are just a little bit too afraid to open up, and you just have to be willing to open up and maybe break in and see that's the same thing that happens with artists and collaborating, is again listening and understanding other people's objects, especially when you're collaborating with artists. And if you're starting out, it's good to find people that are excited to do what if they're going to be doing something that you want to do, you have to find people that are going to be excited to do it with you the way that you like it. But I'm also very open, and I trust my team. And I'm like, you know what? This is my idea. This is how I would like it to feel. You are free to do whatever you want to do that would represent that in your opinion. And that's sort of what happened a little bit in this shoot too. I mean, it's not the greatest example for hair, because we had a haircut that thanks Maret and Lucian Matis, who were kind enough to lend it to me. But it was just that type of understanding that the team and the models want to actually, I don't know how to explain, I don't know, it's just more about collaboration, and the energy is really hard to explain. It's more about trying to, everybody at the end wants a great image, so you just want to connect in one way or another, whether if it's music, if that doesn't work, then it's got to be an artist, or it's got to be something that you got to find, and not in common, but understanding what their vision is like.
Right. And I do want to make some time. We're going to go a little bit over, because I'm sure you got a few more images that I'd love to take a look at and I'd love to talk about. But before we move on to those images, I've got a question here for Facundo Campos. And I think this is a great question, because this also talks about, you talk about being prepared, but you also talk about being impulsive, right? And having those two sides of the coin being an important part of your creative process. So Facundo wants to know, he says, you've mentioned your impulsiveness in your shoots. For example, the times you've planned and the times you haven't planned. Do you purposely put yourself in uncomfortable situations to push yourself creatively?
Yes, every time. Yes, every time. Sometimes you were saying before about shooting for commercials, and that's why I said the commercial part, that I get to get the shots right off the bat of the way that maybe the client was, or just I know what kind of shots are going to be the winner shots, and then I kind of get to experiment. And the reason why I talked about that, I'm not the creative or fashion or just the creative part, is because sometimes I do start with what I don't know what it's going to happen. And it's because I almost, that's a little bit more of the excitement. I don't really know how things are going to turn out. And if it doesn't work, then I just keep working at it until I get it. But yeah, I think I do really put myself in uncomfortable positions. But hang on, always knowing that there's a team behind all of this. Everybody's time is on the table. So if that doesn't work, I will go into a different style that I know it's going to work, and maybe modify it a little bit so it's different than any other time. But yes, I do put myself in an uncomfortable position. I think it's just a self thing. Yeah,
of course. Very cool. So can we let's move on to a few more photos before we wrap this up.
Yeah. Sorry. So we got. Oh yeah. So from the same shoot, there we go. These are sort of like the final shots. Again, I wanted to show a little bit of different lighting that I use. So here I was using a projector and a small octobox on a boom stand, a lighting piece. So yeah, this one, it was just more about trying to have a different background and a little bit of movement too, because this was a little bit of a slow shutter on this one, because I didn't want the projector to be extremely sharp. However, on the last shot, I kind of did, but it was just a little bit of like trial and error that it worked. So yeah, and that's what I did here. And here you can see the behind the scenes, which again, we didn't have an Apple box in the studio, but we made sure that her stance was safe, and we were able to work with. In the second slide, you get to see a little bit of the small octobox in the air, but we got Erica and Ree in the back working hard, blowing the dress. So yeah, that's the behind the scenes of that one.
Just a quick question about this. Do you have any advice for people who want to do work with projectors in terms of what intensity the projector image needs to be at in order for it to read, and exposing, like anything about exposing for a projected image on top of the live model that's in front of the image?
Yeah, it's always, I think you've got to try it out. Depends on your projector. For this one, I was using a pretty high intensity one. It's a really nice projector, so I knew it was gonna get the light, the brightness of the projector bright enough that I didn't have to go too low on my f-stop or shutter speed, but I still did want to take her out of the projector. So in order to do that, that's why I used the flashlight. I think it just depends on the kind of projector you have, and it's more about trying what kind of flashes will go. I mean, sometimes the flash is too strong and the projector disappears. So it's more about playing with your shutter speeds, your f-stops, and see what would work. There's no specific formula for it, especially on what it is that you're trying to get out of it.
Right.
So.
All right, we got time for one more. Let's take us through another example.
Oh yeah, so this is another example that I also used for projector and it's a different shoot, but this one I kind of had fun afterwards in post. Okay, so here's another one. We got Alyssa again, and again working with gels. I just wanted to throw that one in there as for a beauty. And we got this one that was all done with flashlights. Nothing was done with originally I wanted to use a flash, but again, this is one of those things that you just kind of you change on set depending on how the clothes look and how the lighting is looking. So instead of using a flashlight to have her still, I kind of like the movement and the unfocused sort of look. So it was all lit with flashlights.
So cool.
And you get to see the behind the scenes there.
So very cool. And are we looking at a composite of images? Because the model, is likely going to move a little bit as the flash is moving around them. So do you, in that process, get sort of a still of them and then comp it in with one where you're doing the light work?
No, in all the shots that I shot here, they were all shot that way. Now we did, because we were doing a long shutter speed, I can't remember, but it could have been maybe, maybe 45 seconds or a minute, depending on the look of what she was wearing. But it was long, and we were able to get maybe 6 shots, and out of those 6 shots, we would choose one that we really loved. So it was a long day because it does take a long time to get it. But in the top right corner and the behind the scenes, this one over here, I think in that one we shot maybe 3 or 4 shots, and we changed the pose a little bit. And depending on how the light was painting around her, we chose the shot there. But that's, I think, all in that one look what we did.
That's amazing. Very cool.
And I wanted to show the comp work really quick. This is one of the recent shots that I did with Bulia on styling, Lisa on makeup. We had Steph George on hair. AJ and Paul assisting me, and this is what the end image looked like. And when I went on set and I was shooting it, and I don't know if I'll be able to show you the full, anyway, I'll show you the behind the scenes, but before I do that, I already knew what this would look like when I shot it. I could already see it in my head. So that's why it was really clear. And it was actually the first image I edited from the series. But this is what the behind the scenes looked like. I was on the floor, beside that flower, and then because originally I guess what they didn't want that red stripe, because this was Bulia, the stylist. This was her concept of Shattered Alice in Wonderland, and she didn't want these stripes. And I'm like, you know what? Let's just forget it. It's gonna be blood going up. It just came to me right on set. She couldn't find the transparent thing, so I just said it's okay, let's just do it this way. But that's what the behind the scene looked like. And then I have some other images that I will quickly scroll through that if people had any questions or anything like that. And I think, yeah, I don't know what happened there. Sorry. Yeah, I think that's it.
That's
I
amazing.
don't know if you have any.
So incredible. I mean, I think if we were to like sort of wrap everything up and sort of drive home the concept, you can tell me if I'm wrong here, but here's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing that, when you're looking at all these concepts, the thing that makes your work really, really astounding, number one, is the time you've put in. I would say more than anything. I mean, you've connected with something that's really true to you, and you've put the years and the time into honing your craft, so you know what's going to look good. You know what feels right for you through that extended period of time, right? But what I also see, in really driving home our concept here, is that you know when to take chances, and you know that the chances you're going to take, and when to be brave, and when to push yourself out of your comfort zone. You pick the right time to do that, and every time you do that, you grow as an artist, and every time you do that, you create something that you've never created before. And that seems to be what's really propelling you. And when I look at your body of work and all the things that you showed us today, what I'm seeing in all this amazing variety is every time you went into a new project, you tried a completely new idea. And sometimes that idea was completely planned out, and sometimes that idea was completely improvised.
Yeah.
And sometimes it was a mix of both. And I feel like the message to those watching is, pick the right time to be adventurous, pick the right time to be daring, keep doing that, because that's the thing that's going to evolve, and keep shooting lots so that your skill evolves as well, and that instinct continues to evolve. Tell me I'm right, tell me I'm wrong. What do you think?
No, yeah, it's just also I think one of those things that photography allows me to do is to not be afraid. So once you're not afraid to trying things, that's when things like the magic happens in front of you, and you'll see. I mean, there's a lot of failures too that happen, that it's not working. So what's gonna make it work? Right. And I keep pushing that a lot, and I think that I do that every time that I go on set. I want to make sure that every shoot I do is different or better than the shoot that I did before. Right. It's about pushing your own boundaries too, and your own getting yourself out of the comfort zone.
Right. And you also made like a small little comment about just that one of the last jobs you showed us there, which is sort of the broken Alice in Wonderland, and saying that this was an idea from the stylist. And so if there's another theme that I think we can extrapolate from this conversation, is that the team that you've built helps you allow for that diversity, right? Because it's not all up to you. It's not just your responsibility to make this image look great. It comes from everybody. And if you can align yourself with the right group of people, that you're constantly pulling ideas and sharing and collaborating with people, and that's where a lot of the magic comes. Share some of your thoughts around that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very important. This is not just my images; this is everybody else's. And I credit every single person that I work with, because I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing without them. Right. It's not going to happen. Everybody has an incredible input, just as much as mine. So when it comes to concepts and things like that, people, depending on who it's coming from, sometimes it's a mix of everybody's input, and sometimes it's just like, if they really liked my idea, or like Bulia's idea, that was okay, Shatter Alice, let's just do a whole and it was all hers, and we just followed with it. And again, she also let us be on set to do whatever it is that we wanted based on that concept. I don't think she knew that I was going to do that. When I showed it to her, I'm like, what do you think of this? She was like, yeah, this is awesome. So it was almost like, okay, yeah, we're on the same page then. But again, she was still able to see the images pop up on the screen, and I was still in communication with her. Hey, what do you think of this? And so, it's always very different, but something that is very common in my work is that I always make sure that everybody's happy with what they're seeing and the work that they've done.
Yeah, it's awesome. Natasha, thank you so much for your time today. I know that I could go for like another hour, and I'd love to, except that I got a text from my girlfriend reminding me that she needs the living room in about 20 minutes. So I gotta make way for my own family here. So thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. I encourage everyone who's watching to head to your website or to your Instagram and check out your work and continue. I know I'm going to continue to follow the amazing work that you do. So thank you so much for making the time for us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Have a wonderful afternoon. Bye-bye.
You too.